Good morning. Going to do a quick sketch of these flowers. These are mountain laurel, backyard mountain laurel. And had a little white in my brush there. My name is Jason Tako. Colors on my palette: titanium white, cadmium lemon, cadmium orange, yellow ochre, burnt sienna. This is Venetian red. I ended up putting some cadmium red on here as well because the flowers are pretty pink. Alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, viridian, and I have some chromatic black made by Gamblin. I thought I would give that a try as far as making some toned down greens. Let's start with that once and see what that does. I'm going to put a little yellow in there. This is a pretty small sketch. If you struggle with greens, the first thing I've always advised people is get green off your palette. I took Viridian off my palette for a few years or more and just ended up mixing my greens using the primaries. But black, right now I'm just making my greens with black and cadmium lemon, and you can see it gives a fairly natural green in here, which is nice. It's just a small sketch we're going to do today. I'm not going to try to paint the flowers exactly how they are, just going to look at what I'm seeing there to get a suggestion. Very, very bright sunlight we're dealing with today, so there's quite a bit of glare. I'm going to try to minimize that. Sometimes I don't notice these things until after I get into the studio. So we got that in. Now let's get in some very dark colors, very dark values, just to gauge off of. I'm not going to use black for that because that could end up being a crutch. You could end up, putting this black in there, and it's so tempting to just leave it as is. I want color in these darks, and Gamblin's chromatic black is actually made of colors, which is nice, so it's not a real dead black like you get with lamp black or ivory black, but it's still a black, and I'd rather just not be dependent on that and take the easy way out for my darkest darks. So keeping this pretty abstract for right now. Just going around the approximate area where I might see, where I picture these flowers being. And if you're newer to plein air painting, doing little sketches like this can be so helpful. I always tell people when you're starting out, and this is a mistake I made, I'd go on and try to do something extraordinary, try to do some really awesome painting from start to finish and get everything in it, including the kitchen sink. But when you're starting out, you should just go out to try to understand light and form, light and shadow and form, color and value. And so like something like this, obviously there's a lot of intense value between the light of the flowers and the dark, which we don't have in yet, and the dark of the background. It's quite a value shift because I'm standing only like 5 feet away from these flowers. So because of that, I do not have the aerial perspective that I'm used to having when I do a landscape. I'm going to clean this off, wipe this off a bit. So what I'm trying to understand is just the value difference between these extreme lights I will have in and those extreme darks, which you get more of when you're doing an intimate scene like this. So that's my objective. Everything else should take a back seat. It's perfectly sunny right now, but let's say some clouds moved in, or the owner of the property is going to come out and shoot me. No, I can actually be here, but you know, something like that. At least I would have my objectives down. Okay, so I have some greens in there. Now let's go in for the dark part of the flower. My cadmium white's slipping down there. And it's a pink. I'm going to try, let's try some alizarin in white. Now flowers can be very pure in color. But even that's a little too much. I think I'll add some cobalt to that to darken it somewhat. Or not so much darken it, but neutralize it. So when neutralizing a very pure color like flowers, a lot of people might be tempted to go, well, the opposite of a cool red, that would be some kind of green. And then they'll jump to maybe like a sap green or something to neutralize it. But that might be too much. You can neutralize it by just adding in just a little bit over on the color wheel. So with flowers, with pure colors, try neutralizing it first with something next to it on the color wheel rather than something opposite on the color wheel. And you might be thinking, well, that's not neutralizing. It is. It's semi-neutralizing. Now I'm going to have to do a lot of wiping when I'm putting these flower petals in over this wet paint. Looks like I got a bee around me. Let's add just a touch of cad red in there, see what that does. So right now I'm just trying to compare the dark part of the flowers with the even darker color I have in here. See the larger abstract shapes of the whole mass of the flowers. Don't try to look at just individual petals. And actually, I'm squinting at this when I look at it. Squinting at the flower petals. Squint your eyes down. That's one of the keys to the good painting, plein air painting especially, is squint at your subject. And instead of seeing all these individual petals, you'll see shapes of color and value. It'll simplify it for you. Richard Schmid talks about this extensively in his book, classic book, Alla Prima. Which, if you don't have it and you want to be a serious painter, get it. That book kind of changed my life, my artistic life, that is. See, up in here, it's interesting. It gets so dark. The petals get so dark that when I squint them especially, that they almost just blend right in with the dark of the green. think I'm going to put this pink all over here in most of the area where the flowers are going to be this dark. I'll go over it with some light, but I'll have that to work into. The sun is going to shift pretty fast, so I don't want to end up like filling in the holes, you know, filling in the white parts. If I have the pink, the dark pink over the whole thing, I can actually work a little bit quicker. I don't have to, oh wait, I got to fill in that little spot there. By the way, those of you watching on YouTube, usually what I do is the first 10-20 minutes of video, give or take, are going to be for the YouTube public. The rest can be seen on Patreon. And you can become a Patreon supporter for $5 a month. And it helps me to keep doing these videos. There's a link below in the description if you want to do that. I greatly appreciate it. I know a lot of people are doing that, but YouTube ad revenue is pretty pathetic, so. And those of you Patreon supporters who are watching this, I want to thank you tremendously. And I also have some videos just for my Patreon supporters. I'm starting to do that. Starting to show less to the YouTube public and more just for those who support me. So there are videos on there that no one else gets to see. Okay, so we have some of the darks in there. And now let's get some of the lights in. This is going to be a little tricky because sunlight is warm, and just adding white's going to cool things, and there is some cool in there, but I'm going to add a touch of cadmium lemon, just a little bit of it. Then I went with too much. Okay, I'm going to try to find my most prominent light color here. Let's go right about here. Now, I'm not going to paint these lights exactly how I see them. I'm going to try to suggest the overall shape of these flowers, of the whole mass of flowers, if you will. This is mountain laurel, so it's just a kind of big cluster of flowers in here. Let's go with the little cad red. I haven't painted flowers in a long time, so this is a bit of a challenge, especially plein air. So who knows, maybe nobody will see this video if this ends up being a disaster. So instead of, trying to paint a specific petal, like that exact petal there and the one next to it, and the one next to it, I'm just looking at the overall shapes, doing a lot of squinting, and just trying to mimic the feeling, the rhythm, the pattern, if you will, of the shapes. Okay, before I go any further, in order to bring out these intense light colors, I need to go dark with my values back there. So I'm going to have to go real dark, because that's the only way to capture the effect. If I go any whiter with what's going on here, any lighter, I'm going to get too white. I can go pure white there, and it's still not going to look light enough. Remember, it's all about relationships. So if you're not capturing the effect of something by making it lighter, then perhaps what you need to do is go darker with what's around it, which is what we're going to do next. Okay, so I'm going to grab the smaller brush, and to get my darkest dark, I'm not going to use black. I don't use black usually. If I do use it, I'm not using it to get my darkest dark, because once again, it's easy to just default to that and end up with a fairly dead, colorless painting in your shadows. And this chromatic black cannot get as dark of a value as what I'm about to do now. So I use the black for toning down intense colors like greens, and not for trying to get my darkest value. Alright, so my darkest dark I actually would get with burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. And we put a smidge of alizarin in there. That's going to give me my darkest dark, my darkest value that I'm capable of getting. I have to do a lot of wiping of the brush, because when I do a stroke like this down into the flowers, which I like doing, it ends up getting some of the white on my brush. That does too. Now see, as I go around here with this really dark, how it starts bringing out those flowers more. Not to say we're not going to do more lights in the flowers, we definitely need to, but just wasn't matching up. And I knew just from painting for a long time that if I just kept piling on a lighter value, it wouldn't get there. Now, this is a good example too of the whole concept of relationships and priorities. You know, what are your intentions? But my intention is to get the colors and values of the flowers. There's lots of green in here, okay? And to get that green to show up how it is in life, I would have to paint this background a lot, or not a lot, but somewhat lighter. And I might be able to suggest some of the green in there. Let's do a little viridian and yellow ochre. I can kind of suggest some of the leaves, some of the lighter green in there, but I really just want to capture the effect of these flowers in sunlight. Therefore, I have to kind of sacrifice other things, and that green that I'm seeing in the shadows, well, that might have to go, because I need to make these shadows darker in order for the flowers to pop out. That's what you have to do a lot of times in high contrast situations. Something has to give. I didn't want to do that. By the way, do me a favor if you got this far and like this video. Even if you're only going to watch it on the YouTube side, that's great. But it helps keep the algorithms happy. And okay, so I'm going to stop there and take this over to the Patreon side. Like I said, if you could do me a favor, like this video. If you want to subscribe, that's cool. But check out Patreon. Like I said, you can see this full video without commercial interruptions, and it helps me to keep this going. But I thank you so much either way for watching, and we'll see you again soon.